gentlemen, I'd like to call to order the September 17th business session, and I'd like for the secretary to call the roll, please.
Alan Hatfield,
Here.
Doug Fritz,
Here.
Shannon Pennington,
Here.
Paul Miachi,
Here.
Drew Alexander,
Here.
Roy Switzer,
Here.
Robert Carmar.
Let the record reflect that we do have a quorum. So with that, we will begin. The first order of business will be the approval of the minutes. I think everyone's got a copy of that in their packet. Are there any questions or corrections that need to be made? If not,
I'll make the motion we approve the minutes as read.
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second. Will you please call the roll, please?
Roy Switzer,
Yes.
Drew Alexander,
Yes.
Paul Miachi,
Yes.
Shannon Pennington.
Yes.
Doug Fritz,
Yes.
Alan Hatfield.
Yes.
Okay, the third order of business would be the site development plan for Memorial Highway, Battlefield Memorial Highway, I apologize, which is Dollar General. If you would state your name, address, and company for the record, please.
I'm Bill Stevens, and I'm with Madison Engineering. I'm representing Bill Stevens, I'm with Vantage Engineering. We're out of Harrisburg, Kentucky, and I'm representing the developer. Not on. I can just talk loudly.
She's gotta
Well, Bert will
record
fix
you.
that one, I
She has to
think.
record you.
Well, just talk loudly.
That'd be a problem.
Oh, it's not,
Yeah,
it's
let's see
not.
if he can fix it for you.
Oh, okay, all right, so we're not recording, all right, just hold up, we have to record.
The audio system.
Yeah, that's why that was on.
Record on the phone if you have to for the
Well, we
secretary.
got a spare right here.
We're out.
I don't know. Any IT professionals in the audience?
Got a switch in? Well, no.
Oh,
I don't think it's plugged in.
Who should plug it in?
They get the younger guys to show you up there.
yeah, Mr. Eves know more about it than we do, I think. Oh, man.
Well, I know that don't fit together.
No, it's down there, Bert. We never had to do it. That's who that person's
Call
name
Bert,
was
get
on
him
the
up
screen.
now.
We don't know who it was.
Yeah, where's business now? All right, once again, state your name, your address, your profession, your business, I guess, and we'll start over.
All right, I'm Will Stevens. I'm with Vantage Engineering, 2038 Danville Road, Harrodsburg, Kentucky, and I'm representing the developers, Kentucky Lodging and Development of the Dollar General store that you guys have in front of you. I think we discussed most of the specifics last time. One of the issues that seemed to be that we spent the most time on was the tree selection. Since that last meeting, I took Paula's advice and contacted the Kentucky Division of Forestry. This is an email that I received from them. She recommended some trees specific to our site based on the soil type, based on the terrain of the site. From that list, I made sure that none of them were on your banned trees list. And so we selected them from that list, and beyond that, the only logic for placement was I put the bald cypress closest to the ditch line that's already on site because they tend to do the best in swampier, wetter soil. So that was the main change from the last time you saw this plan was the improvement to the landscape plan there.
Will, do you want to tell them about the parking places too? You and I had a conversation about reducing the required number based on your square footage. So your variance was gonna be from, instead of 46 to 30, it was gonna be 37 to 30. Is that have a number right?
Yeah, that's up to you guys to interpret. I mean, I think it's unclear the way it reads, whether it means, what we were discussing was whether the parking standards mean sales floor area or gross floor area. The Dollar General store has a sales floor area right around 7,300 square feet as opposed to a gross floor area of 9,100, the remainder being storage for
Which
for
we have
product.
we have two different standards for two different types of uses like that. I think in the past, that waiver's been granted based on that, the different types. So we're gonna have a different use for retail sales floor area versus office space and storage area. So we were able to reduce the number required by then. So it just makes it a little less. He's still asking for a variance, but it doesn't seem as prohibitive as it might have before. 16 spaces versus 7 spaces. Dollar General obviously has a business plan that they believe in and has built these all over the place. They pop up like Starbucks, I say all the time.
Yeah, as I said last time, the main thing is
But I think
if
they feel
if
pretty
they
comfortable.
if they thought they could make money off the 31st space, they would be begging
They want
to
to
have
do
it.
Right, yeah, so.
How many spaces different, Bert?
Was it 7?
Again, that's up to you. I mean, if you look at
Okay.
gross floor area,
I think you can argue
yeah,
that.
if
I
you look
think
at
I would
gross,
accept
it's
that.
16. If you look at
So,
net, it's 30. It's
So
7.
he's going from
Yeah.
what to what?
46 to
30,
30.
going to 30.
46.
Going to 30 is what we're asking for.
From 37.
I do have a question on your septic tank system. The
Mhm.
minimum lot area for septic tank may not be adequate to meet the minimum requires for septic systems imposed by the Madison County Health Department. Have you got any more information from the health department?
I do, yeah. We actually brought this is from our preliminary site evaluation with the health department. They came out and looked at the site, and the plan that you see on there, we didn't go in that much detail on it, but the area to the rear of the tree line in the back of the building, that's reserved for a leach field back there. And we met with Barry Jackson on site twice actually, and he did some soil testing to verify that our leach field would work back there.
Square footage will work back there?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he has issued you a septic tank permit.
My understanding is that it's a two-stage process, and the first stage is to do a site evaluation and pay a site evaluation fee, and then after that, grant the actual permit. He told us the other day, we asked him about all that, and he said, well, you typically will go through planning and zoning first. If you're approved, then go ahead and pay us for the actual permit. But he said as far as he's concerned, you know, he's good with the site because he's been out there to look at it and evaluate it.
Nice selection of trees, very nice. The willow oak's gonna be a little messy. It's gonna be a little messy, but it's a nice tree, it really is. And Taxodium, which is the ball cypress, is a beautiful tree, as is the swamp. The swamp oak's virtually indestructible. Very nice tree.
I thought that was a good idea to get an expert that knew the area. She actually was, I think, specific to Madison County and a couple
Did a
others.
swing survey for you,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Nice choice. I saw that you have detention ponds kind of all over the place. Your detention pond calculations are up to snuff for the water management out there.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah, we actually have 2 detention ponds on either side of the entrance. Just the only reasoning for that is just to have enough detention area to hold the water. But we met your all's storms as well as the state highway department's 25-year, 24-hour storm.
Any other board members have any questions or comments?
I think he's done everything we've asked him to do.
If not, we would have a motion, please.
I would move that we approve this plan with the following.
Mike, let me interrupt you just 1 second real quick. The fiscal court has not approved the second reading of the zone change yet, so you may want to make your motion conditional upon that approval. That'll be on the agenda for the fiscal court next Tuesday.
Okay.
So before the chairman signs it, we'll just make sure that that gets through court if you want to add that to your motion.
I would make a motion, we approve this contingent upon the fiscal court approving the zone change. And we approve the dimensional variance for 125-foot yard setback to 100 feet of variance for the number of parking spaces from 46 down to 30 spaces. A dimensional variance bringing the landscape buffer down from 15 feet to 10 feet because they are putting in the opaque fence in addition to the tree line. And contingent upon getting signatures of all of the departments, including the health department.
We have a motion, we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Alan Hatfield,
Yes.
Doug Fritz,
Yes.
Paul Melton,
Yes.
Drew Alexander,
Yes.
Roy Switzer,
Yes.
Shannon Finnegan.
Yes. Thank you all. Thank you. The next order of business would be the site development plan for 101 Interstate Drive. Do you want, oh, yes, that's Wayne.
Dwayne Wheatley, Abacus Engineering, representing the developer, Steve Choxley. This is the plan we looked at the work session for the fuel center at the Wow Food Mart, along with parking for the trucks. It consists of a total of 5 little lots up there, about 5 acres. We added the additional entrance to get around the pumps, and we also widened the entrance there to make it where it'd be easier for the trucks to get into. And we just like KU and AT&T, and we're supposed to get their signatures tomorrow.
Mr. Wheatley, you're supposed to specify in your tree planting a tree inventory. No, you say it's tree.
But we was wanting to do all small trees to do dogwoods is what we had in mind.
Uh-huh.
That way we would, not as much leaf and stuff out in the parking lot and that sort of thing.
Uh-huh. You got a name for this small tree that you're thinking about?
Well, just dogwoods. I don't know what particular type, but I can look on the list and get one.
You couldn't put in a messier tree than a dogwood for a commercial area. But I noticed that you have specified 28 trees. So I think that, that is something we would want to know a little bit more information about.
Okay, I can make that.
I would think about the swamp oak. Nice tree. Nice tree. It doesn't grow terribly fast.
What kind's that?
Not terribly messy.
Which one?
The swamp oak.
Okay.
They're nice.
Yeah. Not anywhere near as messy as the dogwood.
Okay, that sounds better. Yeah.
So we got the entrance.
Entrance here. And they took out some stuff and put another entrance
Put that
here.
there. We got everything.
Got the lighting.
Yeah, we have lots all the way around Interstate Drive, all the way down through there, every 50 feet.
How do you find the fire hydrant? Where's the fire hydrant?
There's one on the right side, right before you get to our property, the right side of the road. And then there's one, I can show you.
Into the cul-de-sac. That was gonna be my next question.
The one's in the
Thank you, Don.
cul-de-sac on our side. Oops. There's one.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought there was one for the end, right?
I see it now, yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Where's that located?
Yeah. Should, the white one, service van. I think was his plan, if I remember right.
Bart, do you know what the reg is on lighting of commercial truck depots? Looks
I
like
don't
he
think
has,
our
what do
reg
you have one?
specifically addressed that.
Okay, you
that
have one
use.
every 50 feet, is that about it?
We're meeting with KU tomorrow to
Okay.
get exactly their layout, but we got them right now, I think every 50 feet or something like that. Just on one side and hoping they can do some kind of directional light, just to keep it in our parking lot.
Have you got it on both sides, Mr. Wheatley, or just one, the lighting?
Just one.
Just the one side.
The roadside.
I wouldn't suggest putting it on both sides. I don't know. Thoughts, comments?
Yeah, we have a meeting tomorrow at 10 with KU.
Okay.
and we'll go
Just for
there.
safety and security reasons, the trucks are tall, it gets a little dark.
Mhm.
More lights would be better, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. And better for business, hopefully.
right.
That's the main goal.
It just looks better and it's safer.
Yeah.
You will, I mean, you do have some housing kind of up above you, so you will have to be a little
Yeah,
bit
in the
careful
front
about
area.
directions and brightness of
Yeah.
your lighting, but I do agree that, on one side, you may not have adequate lighting for all of those tractor trailers that you've got positioned on the other side of the parking area over here all the way down.
Is there any more questions or comments? Then if, we need a motion.
I would make a motion that we approve the design of the, name of it right, interstate.
Wow, Food Mart LLC.
Interstate Food Mart LLC at 101 Interstate Drive, as presented with the caveat that you need to supply us with a tree inventory management, and you need to make sure your trees follow the 1.5-inch diameter, 4 feet above the brace. And none of them are on the prohibited list, that you check with KU about the advisability of additional lighting on the other side of the parking area. Other than that, I don't see anything else. Was there anything else?
Signature.
And the signatures, all the signatures on the plat.
We have a motion, do we have a second? I'll second the motion. Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Alan Sheffield,
Yes.
Doug Fritz,
Yes.
Drew Alexander,
Yes.
Lori Switzer,
Yes.
Paul Bianchi, Shannon Page.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
The next order of business is the site development plan for 3585 Colonel Road. Is one here to represent them?
Stuart Spencer with Spencer Lane Surveying, 311 North 3rd Street in Richmond. This is the site plan you guys looked at the work session a couple weeks ago. Can you hear me? We're expanding Central Kentucky Truck and Trailer Sales. Purchased an additional lot just south of their existing facility. Looking to expand the gravel lot just to contain more inventory. I think we've met everything we talked about. We've added the request for the variance on the asphalt parking lot due to the nature of what they do. Asphalt doesn't work, the moving and twisting and turning of moving trailers around and dropping the posts down that hold them up on asphalt destroy the asphalt, so gravel works better for that. We're going to remove the entrance. There's an existing entrance into this site onto Colonel Road. We're going to remove that and fence that off. So actually, it's already fenced off, so that can't be used anymore. Yeah.
Tree inventory map,
I'm sorry.
your plan says tree.
Yeah, I caught that when I was looking at
Yeah,
that,
you
that we
caught
didn't
it on the last
specify.
one.
We had talked about doing, like white pines,
As
some-
we talked about last week, currently the white pine is dying as fast as you're planting them in the Kentucky area because of the white pine bark beetles. So you will plant those trees, you are required to maintain the lines, so if they all die off, which they will, you're gonna have to replace them all. So white pine, although a cheap tree, is not a good choice.
well, open to suggestions, just something that we wanted to create a buffer there, since it is commercial, joining the church property, to create a screen. We can select a different type of pine if
Did
needed.
we say you didn't have to do nothing in the back because of the existing farm?
The back is already a extremely dense vegetative buffer.
It is, yeah.
I saw that on the.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I was thinking,
Yeah.
Are there cattle on the Sword Farm real estate?
I don't know if there currently are or not.
I noticed you said there's an existing farm fence, and there really has to be an agreement between the two property owners that that existing farm fence is sufficient to keep the cattle from joining you or you joining the cattle, joining the farm.
I mean, I assume if there are cattle on there, the fence is sufficient, because they haven't been wandering off onto Colonel Road, so.
But I think we need to know that is a sufficient fence, or you're gonna be on the hook for a new farm fence, and that's in the regulation.
Okay. It is a good fence through there, I do know that. I mean, I've been out there on the side.
That's what I thought.
It is a solid, good farm fence. It's a sword farm.
Wouldn't that be a 50-50 though, Doc?
And most of the
No.
time, the developer gets pretty much stuck, although Kentucky law
With the
does
whole
say
thing,
that it should
yeah.
be a 50/50.
Really?
Mhm.
Actually, if our property is not a fenced and enclosed property,
I didn't think you'd be
then
responsible.
we wouldn't be responsible
That's
for
kinda
it,
what
the
I-
farmer would.
Yeah, it's the developer's responsibility. I can tell you from experience.
Oh.
yeah, the developer gets hung with whether you like it or
Yeah.
not.
Well, the developer's the one developing the
Trust
land,
me.
so.
It don't
yeah,
matter if it's
farm-
5 feet or 50,
It's-
you get on with it.
The
Farmer doesn't get
regulation
stuck with it.
requires a 612 woven wire fence with 6-inch posts on the 16-foot.
That'd be something I'd make a note of.
Corners.
Or an agreement with the
An
farmer.
agreement.
Or an
with the
agreement
farmer.
with the farmer that the fences are adequate.
Yeah, that'd save you.
I'm trying to think if I see any cattle around there. I say they do.
So you just want to check on that, because you don't want to go through all of this and then all of a sudden, you need a farm fence. Did you conjoin the two properties?
We have, yes.
And you've already got the fence across the driveway, don't you?
That's right,
You just take the gravel up there and it takes the entrance out?
yes.
Okay. You can supply us with a tree inventory?
I will.
Pines or something else, or?
I think we'll stick with some kind of pine, because we want to,
That's
you
what
know,
I said earlier.
a solid buffer there that
Yeah.
If you want to read about farm fencing, it's in the land use regulations on page 75, and it's this bottom paragraph on page 75, talking about 6-inch line posts. The T-posts are 6 feet apart, the corner posts are 8 to 10 feet in length, concreted or double braced, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then it goes on to talk a little bit more about your fencing requirement.
but if that fence is already in place, then we're.
Yeah,
we're
if it's
good.
adequate, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm
There's no
not,
problem
I mean, I've been out there, I've
as
seen
long
the,
as
it's a nice, good, solid, standing farm fence, so.
I think
Just get
it
your
is.
agreement.
Just to get your agreement between them, and I
Yeah,
think
that's
it's
it.
protected then.
Any more questions or comments?
The only other thing you have to do is ask for a waiver on your buffer between you and the Sword Farm. You are actually a B buffer of 4.1 to a UC 7 is a B type buffer, which is actually 15 feet wide, and you have a 10-foot landscape buffer. So, are you asking for a waiver to make it a 10-foot landscape buffer on the back side?
I was not aware of that. We didn't talk about that before. We certainly can. We have the space to leave a 15-foot buffer
I mean,
there.
it looks like you're pretty well buffered with the normal tree line. I was hoping they could bring the pictures up, but they can't.
So you're gonna change it to a 15-foot buffer?
We
Said
can-
we could.
Or you
We
gonna
can
ask
if
for the
that's
waiver?
needed.
He's gonna change
We
it.
can change it to a 15-foot.
And you're fine on the church side, that's an A buffer between a 4.1 and the church, so that's fine. But, pick a tree that, isn't gonna cause you a lot of problems.
Any more questions or comments? If not, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve 3585 Colonel Road with an agreement that the fence is adequate with the adjoining landowner, an approved tree inventory and a 15-foot waiver. Or you're gonna add the buffer to 15 foot, right?
We will. Yes.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Cory Nelson,
Yes.
Drew Alexander,
Yes.
Roy Switzer,
Yes.
Alan Hatfield,
Yes.
Doug Fritz,
Yes.
Shannon Kenny.
Thank you.
All right, the next order of business would be the zone change application for 1194 Goggins Lane, UC 7 to UC 1. What part of here represent that? Please state your name and address.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mike Eves. I'm an attorney here in Richmond. My office address is 218 West Main, Richmond. I have with me another lawyer in our office, Tyler Frazier, who's also from Richmond. There are two different applications. It's one project. There's one tract of land. You want to discuss them separately together. Otherwise, I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to duplicate much of what I'm going to say.
Yeah, you probably make a presentation on them if the exhibits and the testimony is gonna be similar in the
Yes, sir.
two, but we will need to take up separate discussion and separate vote when it comes time to vote on those two, since they're two different.
So we're gonna discuss them as one and then vote as two.
Well, he can present them, no, we need to discuss them as two.
Okay.
He can present them as one.
Present them as one
not a
discussion.
duplicate.
All right.
My comments will be short, but you don't want to hear them twice.
So which one are we starting with, the 39 or the 22, or 30? Yeah, 39 or 22?
I think the agenda says we're gonna do the UC 1 first, so let's probably stick to
Yeah,
that.
all right.
Well, so we're talking about them separately, or we're talking about them together?
Well, you're gonna talk about them
You're gonna
Together.
discuss them
together,
together.
they're
Oh,
gonna talk
oh,
about you separately.
all right. This is about a 62-acre tract of land. It's on the east side of Goggins Lane. It's currently zoned agricultural. Proposal is to develop 22.4 acres as UC 1A, single-family residential, and to develop 39.6 acres as UC 2. UC 2 property is located nearest to and borders the church, which is also located on Goggins Lane, and is surrounded, I guess, on two sides, well, one side primarily, I guess, by Richmond Center. Richmond Center, of course, is in the city limits. It's zoned B3, which under the city regulations is the most intensive use that's permitted under their ordinance. I do have with me the surveyor, Stuart Spencer. I would like to ask him to come up to talk a little bit about the site and some of the exhibits that you've already been handed.
Before we swear him in, all the signs and everything have been, all the notifications have been made, and the signs and everything's been made public, correct?
That's correct.
All right. If you would, please raise your right hand, swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
I do.
State your name and address again for the record.
Stuart Spencer with Spencer Land Surveying, 311 North 3rd Street here in Richmond.
Stuart, if you would tell me what work you've done in connection with the development and the proposed rezoning of the property on Goggins Lane.
We have done some preliminary layouts, looking at the existing property plats and preliminary design of how to lay out roads and lots on the property, as well as existing storm drainage issues.
It's difficulty here, back here, so could you address us?
Yeah, please get to the microphone and speak as loud as you can. We need all the members to be able to hear.
I apologize, I'll repeat. We have studied the existing boundaries of the property, looked at what's there. We've done some proposed layouts of how to lay out the streets and lots in the development. We've looked at existing storm drainage, among other things.
And have you done a boundary survey of the property?
We have not done a complete boundary survey at this time.
Okay, did you not do a boundary survey when this was submitted to the city before?
We did
A
not.
retracement survey?
We did not. There was one that had recently been done that was submitted with
Okay.
that application.
Okay.
Please
And-
step up to the mic now when you speak.
It-
It- Yeah, you can that
it out
or
of
pull
it.
it to the side, but now everybody want to hear the comments.
That'll
and
work
answers.
better.
Have you prepared a layout of the two tracks that are being proposed for rezoning?
We have.
And is that Exhibit 5 that's previously been distributed to the Planning Commission?
Yes, it is.
And describe for the Planning Commission, please, the development as it's, the rezoning as it's being proposed.
So the 22-acre tract is being proposed as a single-family tract, as you see one, and that's to the north. That's the property that joins Brookline subdivision. The property to the south that joins Richmond Center, the 39.6 acres, would be the UC2 that's being proposed.
And would you describe to the Planning Commission, please, the property that surrounds this property, the property that surrounds both what's proposed as single-family property and the property that surrounds what's proposed as UC2?
Yes, so the UC2 property is surrounded on the south by an existing church, and on the east by Richmond Center, and of course on the west by Goggins Lane. The single family that's being proposed is also joined on the east by Richmond Center. It's joined on the north by Brookline subdivision and on the west by Goggins Lane. I think it's worth noting that even though Richmond Center is not currently developed all the way along that eastern edge, that is all Richmond Center property and potential future commercial development, all zone B3.
In fact, am I correct in saying that the property to the rear or to the east, I guess, of this UC2 property is owned by Home Depot?
That is correct.
And in addition, did you prepare, as the ordinance requires, a proposed or a conceptual plan or conceptual layout?
We did prepare a conceptual layout.
And is that Exhibit 6?
That is correct.
And again, has there been any engineering go into that, or is this just a concept?
This is just a concept at this time.
Would it be fair to say that it's unlikely that this is exactly the configuration that would result, primarily because of the engineering that's required, the rock that may or may not be somewhere?
That is correct. This would probably be the absolute best case scenario, which more than likely wouldn't happen due to the terrain of the property.
This sort of assumes that the world is flat.
Flat or all dirt.
And this property is neither of those.
Correct.
And then the location of the property, if looking at Exhibit 7, the location of the property as it relates to Goggins Lane, as it relates to all the other property around it, is that reflected on the PVA map for Madison County that you see here in Exhibit 7?
That is reflected correctly.
Are you familiar with the road classification system of the county?
I am.
And looking at Exhibit 8 and 9, does this indicate that Goggins Lane is, sorry, I don't have my glasses, is a urban major collector.
That is correct.
And as I understand the classification system and the explanation for the classifications, that is one of the most extensive classification in the county road system.
That is correct.
Would you describe for the planning commission, I apologize, I know you all know it, describe for us, if you would please, the road itself?
Existing Goggins Lane was improved several years ago. It has, it's a 3-lane road. It has a center lane. It's often referred to as a twiddle lane, which is a turn left or turn right. Is designed basically to carry the maximum amount of traffic that it could, short of actually 4-laning the road, which would just deal with absolutely excessive volume. So it's a road that's designed to carry a large amount of traffic.
And how, and where or how does it terminate on each end?
So Goggins Lane joins Tates Creek Road on one end. It joins Barnes Mill Road on the other end, both of which are state highways, both of which are improved state highways. Intersects both of those where there's an existing traffic light.
Traffic light at both ends?
Yes.
Sidewalk along Goggins Lane, as I recall?
There is a paved sidewalk the entire length of Goggins Lane.
Would it be fair to describe it as one of the nicer county roads in Madison County?
I can't think of a better one.
Is the sidewalk on your side or the other side?
Sidewalks
Or
on the
both?
other side.
It's on the other
Other
side.
All right.
And are you familiar with the county's urban development corridor?
Yes.
And is this property located within the urban development corridor as reflected on Exhibit 10?
Yes, it is.
Or let Mr. Spencer take a seat if you have any
All right.
questions of him.
Any board
Before
member
I
have any
let you sit
questions
down.
before you take a seat?
Mr. Spencer, what makes you think that City of Richmond is going to let you hook up sewage to their sewer line?
I'll address that.
Okay.
I'll address that.
What about the,
Thank you.
we'll address that first, or,
No,
We'll do that later.
I'll come back to it.
what is the amount of traffic on Goggins Lane? If it's a 3-lane road, what is the amount of traffic that's on there now?
We have not done a traffic study to be able to provide that exact number.
Is there a major backup on it morning and night or any time?
I don't drive that road on a daily basis, so I can't give you a classified statement as to that.
What, are you at liberty to say how many more cars will be on that road after this was fully developed?
We could get that number, but we haven't done that traffic count at this time.
Thank you.
Anything else from any other member?
I will say, at least in my reading of your comprehensive plan, this is not one of the roadways in which there are reported transportation issues. No accident issues according to your comprehensive plan, no traffic issues according to your comprehensive plan. So at least your comprehensive plan does not reflect of all the roads in the county. It does not reflect that this is one that has issues. Dr. Miyake, if you go back to exhibits 1 and 2 and 3, there are 2 major sewer lines that run through the back of this property. When both of those were acquired, and the only ones that I've provided you with is the latest one, there's an earlier one also. There were, sewer lines were installed 2 different times. In both instances, part of the consideration for granting the easement for those sewer was that the property owner was given the right to tap on. This easement that's described in the deed of easements recorded in the Madison County Clerk's Office, Exhibit 1, specifically says that connection is permitted, we have access. It also says have access if there is capacity. I've also attached as Exhibit 2 ordinance number 0806, in which the City Commission in 2008 authorized other similar instances of the right for a county property owner to tap on if they acquired easements. And then if you look at Exhibit 3, Scott Aldhauser, Richmond Utilities, acknowledges that they have capacity. I will say, assuming that this was going to come up tonight, had a meeting this morning with Greg Puckett, attorney for Richmond Utilities, and Scott Aldhauser to confirm that in fact, when this easement was granted in 2012, the property owners were given access, and he confirmed for me this morning that yes, that is true. So I don't have any qualms in telling you we have access.
Can you tell me or somebody tell me, what is the density of single-family residential in Brookline? Is it 3 to the acre, 2 to the acre?
No idea, Doc. I think it's similar to our high density.
It's R1A, and I want to say it's
Okay.
three, like
Yeah, it
three,
doesn't-
3.6, maybe
It's not
less.
high
It's
density.
four or less.
It's for, yeah, 'cause
I
it's not
think.
high
Per
density.
acre.
Per acre, yeah.
Okay. So basically Brookline is also, do see 1A. By the
Sorry,
time it looks
say-
of it, it's 1A when you
Say
drive
again?
through.
I'm sorry.
When you drive through Brookline, it looks like 1A, which would be medium density. It doesn't look like high density. High
No,
density is
in
9,000.
Richmond's ordinance, R1A is the lowest density, single-family residential density they have. They have A, B, and C, and that's the lowest
That's
density.
the lowest density. So 12,000 square foot lots.
Any of the committee members have any questions for Mr. Eads?
Well, let me, just one or two more little things, but
Go ahead.
my comments will be very short, I
Go
promise.
right ahead. Don't let me impede you.
I've also included a copy of a county ordinance, number 18-15, which is Exhibit 4 in your packet, which, and I didn't recall this until I read the ordinance, but apparently in late last year, and apparently, and you probably remember it, but the Planning Commission and the Fiscal Court, as I read it, in order to be competitive with the density requirements of the city of Richmond for multifamily, adopted an ordinance amending the existing ordinance, which effectively increased the density permitted in a multifamily zone to the same density that's permitted by the cities, 14.25. Again, that required access to sewer, but the only reason I can think of that this density change would have been made to make it consistent with the cities was to have been competitive. But again, it has to have access to sewer for that density to apply. In reading your comprehensive plan, and again, I've included a number of notes, and I apologize, I'm not here to read something to you that you all understand and know better than I. But the whole issue about development in the urban development corridor appears throughout your comprehensive plan. It's quite apparent. It's in the goals and objectives. It's in the parts of the plan that talk about future development, particularly development of multiple and the mix of multiple and differing housing types is specifically discussed in your comprehensive plan. The ordinance that I've referred to as Exhibit 4 appears to be at least a acknowledgement both by the Planning Commission and the Fiscal Court of the desirability of a mix of multifamily and the density when the infrastructure is in place and an appropriate location. I've included sections of your comprehensive plan at Exhibits 11 and 12, again, which talks about infilling, which talks about density, which talks about development, particularly in the urban development corridor. And another common theme in reading through your comprehensive plan is the existence and development of infrastructure. Not only do the agreements that we have with the city make sewer service available, we also have water service available through the city. It is at, both of those are at a significantly higher rate than city customers. But the existence of water and sewer in this case certainly makes development of this property inevitable. And I think given the location of the property, it's somewhat unrealistic to think that it's not going to be developed. If you look at exhibits 14, 15, 16, and 17, those are all references to your goals and planning objectives in the comprehensive plan, and which clearly indicate that this urban development corridor is the place that these developments are appropriate. And without the development of any further public infrastructure. If you look at Exhibit 18, and part of there won't be many people, I think, who would argue that this property is not appropriate for development. There might be many who would argue why this kind of development. If you look at Exhibit 18, I've attempted to explain some aspects of that. Exhibit 19 is a copy of the planning and zoning map of the city of Richmond. As you can see, this property is completely surrounded to the east or adjoins to the east B3 zoning designation, which again is the most intensive zoning category under the city's regulations. And a big part of that property back there is owned by Home Depot. They still haven't sold it. They still haven't developed it, but it's reasonable to assume that will be developed someday. If you look at Exhibit 20 and Exhibit 21, if you've driven back, and I don't know that you have, but if you've driven back to that Home Depot site, and you can drive your car right up to the edge of it and look down. What you're looking over is that wall that you see. It's a massive, probably 30, 40 feet tall. Extends a significant distance along the property line. The elevation difference is significant. As you could tell, that's Mr. Frazier standing there. You can see he's probably 6'3", 6'4", and you can see what he looks like next to that wall. It is unrealistic to believe, I suggest, that all this property that fronts against Richmond Center would ever be developed or could ever be developed and sold as single family. That's not realistic. The property is very rough to begin with, but the border that it has with arguably, well, not arguably, the most intensive commercial development in Madison County, which is Richmond Center, would make development of that property, that part of the property, for single family purposes just inappropriate. So what the developers have proposed is develop that part that is most directly connected with Richmond Center as UC2, and the remainder of the property that borders the existing single-family residential subdivision, Brookline, to the north as a single family. I've been doing this a long time, and in that period of time I have said a number of times this complies with the comprehensive plan. I don't know that I could have ever quantified how true that was until this proposal. This is your plan. It has the access, arguably the best access of anything you have in the county. It's connected at both ends with state highways, controlled by signals. It has existing sewer in place, existing water, has all the infrastructure for development. And your comprehensive plan makes clear that this type of buffer, this type of transition between the most highly commercial uses of any property in the county to some lesser use and then to a single-family use is certainly appropriate. Now, there'll be some that are here tonight who will say this is going to increase traffic, and it absolutely will. That's why you built this nice new 3-lane road. If you didn't anticipate, or somebody didn't anticipate that there was going to be development on this property, we'd still have a little windy 2-lane blacktop street. That's not what you have. You have a road that, according to your classifications, is the best equipped road in the county to handle that increased traffic. And I saw a circular that somebody was circulated around saying, well, you know, if this gets developed, what about the other property? It's absolutely true. That's the way of the world. That's why you're here. I'm not saying it'll be developed tomorrow, but it'll be developed someday. And it'll be developed right on that road because somebody has already put the plan in place. They put that infrastructure in place to make that possible. So that will certainly happen. You'll hear other people argue that stormwater is a problem. I contend it is not. It is not if your stormwater regulations do what you say they do. The purpose of your stormwater requirements is to prevent. That there's absolutely no control over stormwater from this property today. When it's developed, your regulations require that certain steps be taken to control that water and to control its release from the site. Now, if those regulations do what you believe they do, that will be a bigger help than a hindrance. And the development of this property will finally do something to control some of that water. So with that, I think I feel comfortable in saying this complies with the comprehensive plan. Not going to talk about changes or anything that's appropriate or inappropriate. I think the only thing that has to be satisfied is that, and I think this certainly satisfies it. Be glad to take any questions yet.
Any questions from the members?
I've got a few. Stormwater, and I know you haven't done the detailed plans yet, but where's that gonna end up, at the back of the property?
No.
Doesn't it flow, or does it
Well,
flow forward? What's the
you talking about
elevation?
where the detention areas will be or where it gets
Well,
discharged?
Discharge.
Well, I don't know that I can say that. You've seen our concept plan, but I'm not going to represent to you that that's where it'll end up. It all obviously is going to go in that creek.
Yeah, okay. And then, this is probably a question for Bert. Do we have any, I guess, what are our regulations for high density next to the church? Any kind of buffer, barrier?
Just our landscape buffer requirements between the different zonings.
Okay.
Those will kick in here in site development plan.
It's not a fence requirement or anything, just landscape buffer?
No, there's probably a buffer or a barrier.
Yeah.
And that barrier can be landscaping, it can be fence, it can be
Okay.
many different things, it can be dirt. I mean, there's several different things that can accomplish that same buffer requirement.
All right. I think that's the main two questions I had.
Any more questions for Mr. Eads before we call on the audience for testimony? All right,
Thank you.
thank you. At this time, we would like to offer to any member of the audience if they'd like to come up and make a comment. I would. I think that gentleman right here in the back first. That's the first hand I saw. Everybody will have your opportunity. Please state your name, address for the record. I need you to raise your right hand so I can swear you in.
Right. This one.
That one. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. State your name and
My name
address
is
for the
Jesse Ward, 117 Lake Ridge Drive. I appreciate the presentation that was just made. I thought by and large everything was pretty accurate except the storm drainage. I don't think that's very accurate, but outside of that, you know, I thought it was pretty good. However, I spent this afternoon going over and looking at the purpose of a planning and zoning committee and trying to find as much information as I could so I wouldn't come up here and look like a total idiot. And I found that there's generally problems that exist anywhere there's a planning and zoning committee that they have to be addressed. They're going to have to address the problem of the environmental impact, the infrastructure, how it affects the people that live near the area, and other government services. Now, when the city had their particular planning and zoning committee, I went away from there pretty happy. I thought that the plan was pretty good. I had a vision of a pretty neighborhood with houses on 1 acre lots that was really going to be really nice. But now I find, and I'm not sure why it's going through another committee, but that's not for me to figure out at this particular time. I don't really understand these figures. It said it's going to change from UC1 to UC2. I'm not very good at math. Math is not my major. I'm a history major. But if you figure 6 units per acre, which is what's on that yellow sheet and how accurate that is, and a maximum of 8 units per building, I guess, that figures out to be 48 units per acre, I think. Or if 2 adults live there, that's 96 people per building. Now, if they got children, it's going to be more. Assuming that that's the case, there would be on that particular 30 acres or so, 1,400 to 2,000 people in that particular area. That's pretty dense. Assuming these adults all drive cars, that would increase the traffic on that road by anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 cars a day. Now, I agree with you. The road is really nice, but I'm finding I have more and more difficulty getting out on the Goggins Lane every morning. You know, when I go to drink my morning cup of coffee. So it can become a problem, and I think that's one that you will need to address too as part of your particular job. Now, if you figure 6 units per acre, the entire area would be covered with concrete, blacktop, and brick. The water runoff would be tremendous. Now, I disagree with your presentation. That's the point I disagree with the most, is because I have had days, and I think these people will testify this too, that I was trapped on both ends. Could not go to Taystreet Road and could not go to Barnes Mill until the water receded. So we do have a problem on that end. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against growth. This committee must consider the growth and the change that will affect the people of that particular area. Does it have the infrastructure to facilitate proposed change? Maybe. Maybe it does. How will it affect government functions? We've already seen growth and how it affects the flooding of the creek. If you live there, you'll see it. The people that live in the area is not just the busy street that they're concerned with. These are things that have to be considered, and I think that will be your job to consider those. There's one other consideration I'd like to mention here, and most people don't stop to figure that property tax is actually income tax. Taxes must be paid out of wages for most people. Homes do not produce income unless it's capital gain, and that's another issue. But looking at my own situation, my home was recently reassessed and my property bill increased. The county is considering increasing the rate, and this small tax reduction I got from Trump's administration has already been wiped out. If I ever did sell my home, I would have to pay capital gains, and that is no plan. I don't have any plan to sell it. There's a good chance, if this zone change is approved, homeowners living in Brookline, Covington Woods, Hickory Hills, and perhaps Cross Creek could lose some home value. This would create a case where property taxes going up and their home values may be going down. I'm not going to say that that's going to happen. That possibility exists. The last thing I'll address is how it affects other government services. Looking at the Madison County school system and how it could be affected. Over the last several years, the Madison County school system has had to redistrict several times. This growth in this area could create a situation where children would have to be disrupted again. Starting one school and then the next year changing by parental choice is one thing, but to be forced out of a school is another. Many students are resilient and it doesn't affect them that much, but you will often find kids who have to be redistricted cannot adapt so readily. We met a grandmother this summer whose daughter had been redistricted, and she was concerned that it was going to create a mental health problem for her daughter. I can testify in my own history. I was forced out of a school by redistricting when I was in the 2nd grade. It was traumatic, and I did not recover until I went to high school. If you go back and look at the effect on my behavior and my academic work, you'll say, how in the heck do you ever become a high school principal? In closing, government officials must represent the people of this district. In this zoning change, I would say people fall into 3 areas. There are many who don't care one way or another. They're not affected. There are people like the ones sitting here who care a lot. Buying a home is the largest investment of money that most people will ever make. And anything that might affect the value of that investment needs to really be looked at very carefully. I would encourage government officials to take all the factors involved in such a decision and weigh them very carefully and look at who you really represent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This gentleman back here in the back corner, he was next, and I'll let you go after him. How about that? Please step up here at the podium.
Sure, I don't trip. Be a lawyer's room.
Please raise your right hand. You swear the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Alan Engel. I reside at 106 Cardinal Drive in Rose Hill subdivision. We've lived there for 29 years. Previous to that, I lived in Hickory Hill subdivision starting in 1970, and more about that later. First, I'd like to thank you for your service, as they like to say. As public servants, there's fun and there's fun. I would assume that you have already contacted your opposite numbers in the City of Richmond Planning and Zoning Board and have talked to them about the decision they made and why they made the decision they made previously. We're having a little bit of kind of deja vu going on here tonight. So they're very dedicated to what they do, and they made a decision, and I'm sure you're just as dedicated to what you do. There seem to be kind of 2 areas of concern. The first is the hydrology issue, and I must have missed it, but I didn't get a hydrology report. I didn't get any report because, you know, they're coming before you and they're saying, this is what we want to do, and here's the impact, and there's what we call foreseeable unintended consequences. And I guess that's what you guys are all about. You're looking at, there's the intended consequence of the zoning change, and then there's the unintended consequence of the zoning change. And what unintended consequences are foreseeable, and what should we plan for? What should we recognize? So under that, we don't know what the flooding impact is. A flooding issue, and people here, in addition to me, because I get up every morning and go to work, the flooding issue is real, and the comprehensive plan and comprehensive and the reality of flooding may not be exactly the same thing. So I'd ask you to consider that. The second one is the traffic impact, and there seems to be no study on a traffic impact. It's Goggins Lane. Now, when we moved there in 1970, it was really Goggins Lane. And that road is better than it used to be, but it's still Goggins Lane. It is described as a major lane collector for the county carrying a large amount of traffic. But in reality, it is 2 lanes and a turning lane. That's what it is. It's a 2-lane road with a turning lane. And there's some people, I don't know if they're citizens or residents of this county or they're out-of-towners or whatever, but they think that turning lane is a passing lane. And so the turning lane, rather than solving a problem in a very strange way, has a potential unintended consequence of contributing to a problem. And I'm sure there's a couple of people in this room who have been here when somebody got confused and passed them in the turning lane. So I would put it to you that it may be a 3-lane road, but it's really a 2-lane road with a passing lane in the middle. What is C2? What is the density? And I didn't get a lot of data on, the density, because we're, here's what may or may not be the plan. This may be here, this may be there. The C1s are going to be here, the C2s are going to be here. We're not real sure where the flooding pools are going to be. And so there's stuff up in the air. So how comfortable are you voting yes for stuff that's up in the air? There's a presentation that we want the C1s closer to the other C1s, and we want the C2s over where the more retail industrial section is, and the motivation is to fit the mode. I would put it to you that the motivation for C2 is largely economic. That the margin on C2 in development is better than the margin on C1. Thank you for your time.
I said I'd let this gentleman right here in the blue go. He's had his hand up every time. If you would, please step up here, please. Please raise your right hand. Swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth. State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Paul Souders. I live at 140 Virginia Drive in Rose Hill subdivision, just off the Goggins Hill Dragway. I'm a 32-year employee of the Postal Service. I'm a business alliances manager, and one of the big parts of my job is I look at cause, I look at effect, and I look at results. And I also look at root causes and root results. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. And as the gentleman said, and we all agree, this is the most wanted developed plan property that there is. But we're not just talking about this small bit, because as he alluded, we're also talking that the decisions that you make today will affect what will happen with a 400-acre farm that goes from Covington Woods to Tates Creek and from Goggins Lane all the way up to Gray Oak subdivision. And with that, I think there's a lot of things that we need to look at to consider. Yes, there are problems of traffic on Goggins Lane, but the bigger problem is what results out of that. I challenge any one of you all to go to Richmond Center at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and try to get through there. You can't do it, and it's simply because there is so much traffic. As a result, people are cutting through Goggins Lane to get down to Tates Creek to go to where they want. And it becomes a continual speed problem as a result of that. Not only do we have that problem that there is, but really if you look at it and study it, the intersection of Goggins Lane and Barnes Mill Road is very unsafe because of the angle of entry. And people who are coming from Poozy or from out of town coming in, it really is a blind intersection for them. Now, I know that you all have a comprehensive plan, but I really want to ask you how comprehensive in your plan and how much have you really looked at this, at the things. You addressed very well with the needs that there are for schools, and our schools are already at capacity. The more people you bring in, well, what is your plan as you add more houses to address the needs that there are of the schools that are already at capacity? How does that fit in? Have you already taken that into consideration? Because you can build apartments in a year, but I don't know if there's any money to build schools that quickly. And we're getting taxed so much, I don't know if I'm gonna get stuck with another sales tax on top of everything else that's going on to pay for another school. plus where are you going to put it? This is a serious issue that there is as we go across through there. As I live on Goggins Lane, there are 4 egresses that's within 100 yards. There are 2 for Brookline, there's 1 for Covington Woods, and there's 1 for Rose Hills. And it is very difficult for anybody, including school buses, to make left-hand turns out of any of those. Another issue is as you go down Goggins Lane, there are people who are trying to get into the center turn lane to turn left into Rose Hills at the same time while people coming in the other direction that are getting in the same turn lane to turn left to go into Covington Woods. And it's just a matter of time before we either have a side swipe or we have a head-on collision. Now let's talk very quickly about water. The bridge on Goggins Lane that goes over the creek there in front of Brookline many times has a large amount of standing water that is there on the bridge currently. You drive through there through a good rainstorm, there's a good 6 inches of water that's standing. Now, if you think there's not a water problem, then I would go back and ask the county why, when they replaced the bridge going into Rose Hills, that they raised that bridge up 1 foot when they put a new bridge in. I'll tell you why. Because I'm sick and tired of my bridge being underwater. There's also other problems that there are. If you look at the FEMA record that there is, we have a house on Goggins Lane that's currently on the market for $348,000. You know why that house hadn't sold? Because everything except about 8 feet of that roof line is in the FEMA floodplain. Not only is that house in the FEMA floodplain, there are also 4 houses along Goggins Lane that are currently in the FEMA floodplain. And they will all affect these houses, affect their insurance that's required, and affect the future of what there is. I feel sorry for a guy that has a $348,000 house that has about 8 foot of his roof line. And you can go to the FEMA website and pull these up. And I hope that you all have looked at this because FEMA just updated all their floodplains. And I don't know if that's been changed into your plan because FEMA just did that this year as they brought up that situation that there is. We do have issues, and I have a lot of other concerns that I really don't know the answers to, but I wish that I did. There are concerns about police and fire service and ambulance, but I can tell you this. There was a fire in Cross Creek at one time where somebody lost their house, and I couldn't take a shower in Rose Hills because we had no water pressure. Go to the corner of Goggins Lane and Barnes Mill, and you will see a fire hydrant that is buried halfway down. I've called the water, I've called the fire department, and there's still nothing about that. So is the fire service even capable? If we don't have the money to fix that, how do we know we have enough sufficient water for any additional fires or anything that there is that's not going to cause a backflow and cause the potentials that there are with that? There's a lot of needs for this land, and there's a lot of potential that there is for it. And I appreciate what there is, and I know what's going to happen. I wish I could make every meeting, but I have a 93-year-old dad at home that has Parkinson's, and so it's hard for me to make every meeting that there is. But here's what I would recommend. I would recommend that you go back and you look at your comprehensive plan and you look at that side of the city or that side of the county and say, how can we best serve the residents of Richmond? One way you can do is you could put a park. Let's put soccer fields or let's put some type of park on that side of town. Because again, if I want to go to the park, I've got to fight down the bypass, or I've got to go through downtown Richmond or up Keeneland Drive and go around that way all the way across town. A lot of us don't even go to Kroger's to go shopping because I can drive to Myers or I can even drive to Lexington and be shopping in Lexington faster than I can be at Kroger's in Richmond because of the traffic problems that we have. Look at this land and build a true comprehensive plan and consider everything that's going on. Let's add in some green space. We've got hundreds of acres here potentially that you're looking at. We have tons of starter homes in that area. Brookline and Covington Woods is full of starter homes. Why can't we develop that land or designate that land to be medium value homes? Now think about this, and this is an advantage for the city because with the county doing their raise of the taxes, then who wants to live in the larger subdivisions or the more expensive homes of the subdivisions in the county right now with a raise? But what if we took that same land and we designated it to say we're going to build homes in this area that are going to be $200,000 to $250,000 instead of $115,000 to $135,000? Well, What's the effect of that? Well, the effect is you're going to be making property taxes off a $250,000 house more than you are going to be off of a $115,000 house. And that's going to adjust your bottom revenue. With that, you'll be able to go through. Now, Goggins Lane, the last thing I'll talk about. It is something. But I remember the old Goggins Lane that there was years ago too. You took your life as you went up there, especially the Dead Man's Curve at the bottom of the hill. We all remember that who've lived in Richmond. I've lived in Richmond all my life. But how many years ago has it been since that road has been built? And that road was built and made a 3-lane road with a center turn lane for the purpose of what there was or the anticipated growth that they had at that time. And I guarantee you, if you went back and talked to those people, they said, one of these days, these farms are going to turn into additional land, and we're going to have to take additional homeowner land to spread that lane on out to make it a 4-lane. The more growth that you do in our area, and I'm not opposed to growth. I know it's going to happen. We can't fight that. It's going to happen on the city side. It's going to happen on the county side. But my current call to you is go back and look at your comprehensive plan. Go back and look at your urban boundaries and drive through that area and see for yourself on any afternoon at 5 o'clock or anything else that you can see. Because it's easy to write down something on paper and make it to be truth. And I'll close with this. I'm a pastor, so I need to learn how to shut up. So I'll say in closing, and that'll be it. My dad told me a story last night that I think is very true. He said one day there was a ship's captain who could not do his duties. He was feeling ill, and he called the first mate, and he asked the first mate to come and take over, and the captain went back to his room. The first mate went and filled out the logbook. As he filled out the logbook, he wrote in the logbook that day, the captain did not show up drunk today. That's a very true statement. The captain had never shown up drunk. So we can put everything that there is on paper here that can be actual truth. And we could say that the captain did not show up drunk. That is very true. But the reality is something that is totally different. That's more than something you can put on paper. That's something you've got to drive out, and you've got to see yourself and to understand what there is. So I encourage you all with this to please, please look at this and come up with a true plan of what we really need for all of Madison County. Thank you.
We'll take one more of this gentleman right here. Unless there's any other discussion, we'll take one more. Somebody else have it. Please raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record, please.
Norman Spain, 115 Old Farm Road, Richmond, Kentucky. I came up here with a game plan, and I had some points to make, 4 points to make regarding the regulations, and a couple of points to make regarding the infrastructure. I think some of those have been addressed. But after listening to Mr. Eves, who said he's made recommendations like this, and he thought this was the best development value to be found in the county, and he said, I've been doing this for a lot of years, and he said, I think it'd be hard for me to find a better development opportunity. And I thought, darn it, I've never been before the zoning board before, and he's been here for years and stuff. And I'm thinking, I'm looking at the map, and I don't see the same map that he does. And then I'm starting to think, well, I've been drafted to the majors, and I'm a minor league pitcher, but I got to go out there and pitch and see what we've got here. And what I see is a gentleman who sees the world very differently than perhaps those who live in the neighborhood see it. And I would like to thank Mr. Spencer for being honest that he really couldn't comment on the nature of the road, etc. That's been defined as the best road in the county. What we didn't do is we didn't go, where do they end? We heard the state roads. What are those state roads? Let's dig a little bit deeper here, folks. What are those state roads? 2-lane highways. 2-lane highways. So a 3-lane highway, the best one in the county, ends into 2-lane highways. Show up there at certain times and try to get through that light. And not from that direction alone, Goggins, but from all directions, particularly on Barnes Mill. We have a couple of issue statements here. If you will, I'll go back to the back here. one of the statements was, let's look at the land right there. We have Home Depot. And we have cities across, we have the city across the interstate there. And we have farmland there. We didn't really call that agricultural land, but we have farmland right there that wants to be developed, okay? And he said, quite frankly, you can't put single-family homes in there and develop that land, quite frankly. Well, that's a speculative view from that point of view. That's not a proven yet. And he doesn't know what Home Depot is going to do. We don't know what Home Depot is going to do. So, but that's a speculative view, which also is a bit intimidating when we think about it. I'd like to go on there if I can and add this too. One of the regulations says that this land should not be developed at the expense of the existing neighborhoods. At the expense of the existing neighborhoods. You have neighbors here who are telling you this development is going to impact their neighborhoods. And the county zoning law is designed to protect the county. The county comes, people come to this neighborhood for trees. They come to this neighborhood for space. I don't know about the rest of the people in the community, but when I heard a density of 14 units per acre, that is phenomenally counter to the county plan to remain the county. That's just directly opposed to it. And yet we're being told that that's the only thing that will fit in this county. Well, maybe that doesn't belong in the county. Now, I'm talking about the 2 rating. I'm not talking about 1. Nobody, at least I'm not hearing a lot of opposition to 1, but I'm talking about 2. So I would like to address those issues. There's a couple other there. He said in his experience it applies. I believe that it doesn't apply. I think there's a lot of changes here, and I would, with all due respect to Mr. Eves, who is, I know, a very reputable attorney, I'd like to address the points that we were going to make from the very beginning. That is, we have 4 major points to this move here, if you will. Number 1, this request is not consistent with the county land management plan regulations, okay? Number 2, based upon history of prior people looking at this development, this change here, it's not consistent with that. Granting this request would change the nature of the county, and then we had the infrastructure which has been addressed to you. So let me please walk through some regulations here and explain how they might also be looked at in a different way. In the county land use management regulations, page 20, it states as follows. If the application is for an amendment to the land used management map, the Planning Commission must first find if the proposed amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. Is it in agreement? The answer is, right now, it's still agriculture. It's still agriculture. It's not U2, UC2. In the absence of such a finding, it must then find, okay, that the existing land use classification given to the property is inappropriate, and the proposed land use classification is appropriate. So they have to say that that agriculture is not right, you better move over to the UC2. Or, there can go 2 ways here, that there have been major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the area involved, which were not anticipated in the adopted comprehensive plan, and which have substantially altered the basic character of such area. If he can't show that change, then there's no reason to change. Now remember, this plan comes, from the year 2015, I believe, if I'm correct in that assumption, okay? Let's walk through some of these issues if we can. Nothing really has changed since 2015. Madison County Comprehensive Plan was adopted by the county in 2015. Richmond Center was already there. Going down Goggins Lane, right beside Richmond Center, we have UC1 house, UC1 with 3 houses in that area, and we have a church. Okay? We go further down, we have Brookline and we have Covington Woods. They were already there, zone UC1.
I'm going to jump in here since you're addressing a specific legal point.
Okay.
They specifically stated that they were not claiming there had been, or at least they were not relying on changes to the area as the basis for their land map.
Okay.
Amendment. So they didn't, that wouldn't be part of the board's actual deliberation regarding the changes, I believe that it was.
We did not contend there were any changes.
I believe they're contending on the first part, which is that the proposed map amendment is appropriate and keeping with the comprehensive plan. And that's probably what the board needs to hear about. And things you're saying may apply to that as well, but I don't want to get astray on a legal point that's actually not under consideration.
Okay, I hope I wasn't proposing, I was proposing as regulations. What we are saying, though, is there's an existing area in this UC1 that is UC1 housing. And he's trying to infill that particular section of the corridor. And he's trying to squeeze it into, excuse me, he's not doing this personally. What the developer's trying to do, excuse me, Mr. Reeves, I apologize for that. What's going on here is we're trying to squeeze that development into a very narrow area that is basically UC1 housing. And that's what we've got to look at. So we have not a lot of change in this area. Now we have the acreage and stuff that's going to be developed. Let me just go on here if I can for a second. Let me ask this question. Let me go to the issue of the way it looks right now. I don't believe that there's anything different about what this map shows versus what the city saw when they turned down this proposal. All of those considerations were present, yet even as part of the city, they did not want to infill that. They did not want to do that. They said, we're not going to make that classification. So I know I'm going on change, but let me just let that stand there for a second. Let's look at the history again of the whole property change line here, if we can. And I hope I'm not stepping over what you just asked me to do. So if I am, just raise your hand and I'll move on. Okay, thank you. Okay, Brookline subdivision was agriculture, rezoned R1. Okay, property where Covington Woods was agricultural, requested to rezone to R2, which is the same basically as UC3. Sitting Planning and Zoning Commission on May 27th, 1998, refused to do so. So we have consistency there. Now on Goggins Lane, we have another request for a zone change from agriculture to UC2, and we don't really think that that's the appropriate way to go in developing this land. What we'd like to say here is this. The comprehensive plan in the key issues section, item 5, states the county this. The county reiterates the need to maintain the quality of life for current residents while meeting the needs of new residents. And we welcome new residents, provided they're coming in to bring in a quality of life, okay? The one that we all can enjoy together. And we have some reservations about this. The cost, social, economic, and environmental of providing for new development should not take place at the expense of residents in existing neighborhoods. And it's going to take place at our expense. It really is going to take place at our expense. So we think on that alone, you ought to consider that. How do the neighbors look at it? Going on, if we can, changing the nature of the county. Why do we have a county? Why do we have a county? And you know the answer to that question. Again, we basically have a county. We have a county right now that has 217,000 acres approximately in agriculture. We have 21,000 approximately in single-family housing. And you know how much we have in multifamily housing? We have less than 1% dedicated to multifamily housing. Now, we must have an interest in preserving the integrity of our community. We must have an interest in obviously developing it and consistently developing it with our consistent values of the past and the present. Why do people move to the county? Well, we like residential living, single family. We want to avoid high density, and I don't know about you, but high density traffic is an issue nowadays. It's a big issue. It's a big issue. We've taken a long run. We want to enjoy the peace and quiet on our roads. We're going to lose some of that here. We also want to allow high density not in the county, but in the city. Let the city move forward. They had an opportunity. They took a pass on this one. Okay, and this is not a request for a typical county UC designation. I don't know if you approve this if you have to allow those 14 units per acre, whatever. That's pretty dense, if you will. I I'd like to make a couple other points here. If you do develop this as a one-third property, UC1, and you attempt to develop with a UC2 property for two-thirds of it, depending upon that density, just if you do this, I worked out a little chart here. If you develop it as a UC1, we had 56 acres in our estimate. We didn't have the exact there. If you developed it as a UC1, you'd have 168 homes in there. If you start to develop it as a UC2, given the density there, you're going to have over 500 homes, and if they go up to 14, you might have upwards of, well, about 700 homes in there, units, places to live. That's going to create a tremendous traffic in differential. By my calculations, using a density of 13, which they said they could do for the sewer, we thought, that's going to amount to 4,384 car trips per day versus 432 if you go single family. Forget about the school buses, forget about all the other traffic there. That's a differential, if you will, between UC1 and 2 of approximately per week. There's 2,592 trips for UC1. If you go combined UC1, UC2, as they're talking about, you have over 38,000 trips per month. So we go from 3 to about 38,000. That's a huge traffic problem. That's an infrastructure along with the water. Going back, I think you know what I'm going to say. I'm going to go back to the land use, and I'm going to go back to the regulations that they have to show there's been a change. We don't believe there's been a change that warrants going to a UC1. And number two, we don't believe that this change goes consistently with the land use, the values that have been passed down to the committee over the years, saying preserve the county, take hold of this. And we think that this commission ought to stay firm and hold it as a UC1 area for development in this urban quarter that you have, in the urban quarter. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, I should say? Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have anything to add to this that's different from what's already been added?
I'll be
All right,
very
this
brief.
gentleman right here in the pink right here.
Be very, very brief. Because I do agree with everything that's been said.
Please raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
State your name
I'm
and address for the record.
Stephen Henderson. I live at 150 Virginia Drive, which is just off of Goggins Lane. The only issue I want to add, and as I said, I agree with the things that have been said. The road that's currently there now needs restripping. It's in bad repair as far as notification. People driving down the road don't pay any attention to the 3 lanes. If you drive on that road 4 times a day, one of those trips you'll be passed in the middle lane by somebody speeding. There's almost no control and no patrol on that road. Once in a while you'll see a state police, very, very seldom. Once in a while you'll see the sheriff, and that's it. And if you have that kind of traffic, you're going to have a severe problem of managing the road. We need the road restriped right now, so people know they're not to pass in that middle lane, and they pay no attention to that. When I turn left in my driveway to go into Goggins Lane, off of Goggins Lane to Cardinal Drive, I've narrowly been missed 2 times where people were passing in that other lane, didn't pay attention to me being there to turn, because that's what the lane is for. It's not a passing lane, it's a turn lane. So that's what I want to say, that I think it's very dangerous to have that without further changes.
Does anyone else have anything that's different from what's been presented? We'll take one more, this gentleman right here. That'll be it. Please raise your right hand, please. Swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
State your name and address for the record, please.
Thomas Prophet, 237 Percheron Drive, Brookline. I agree pretty much wholeheartedly with all that's been said by the people with reservations against the zoning regulations on this. What I think it needs to be looked at is you cannot consider UC1 to UC2 and then a UC or UC7 to UC1 and a UC7 to UC2 in different lights when they're on the same property. The biggest thing that I worry about, I moved up here to retire, and it's costing me double to live here now than what I thought it was going to when I moved in here. And I've only been here 10 years. And with the infrastructure, schools, sewer plants, water lines and things that are going to need to be upgraded, I see taxes going up again. Big thing that worries me is if UC7 or UC2 high density housing is allowed in this situation, you've got 620 more acres within 400 or 500 feet of Goggins Lane that are susceptible to this same sort of change. That could be upwards of 8,000 units if it all went to UC2 and 14 per acre. That's going to destroy that livability along that lane there. UC1 would only be about 3,000 units, and that's at 5 per acre. So I just want to think that you have to look a step or two down the road. And as it was brought up, both roads on each end of Goggins Lane is only 2 lane, and there's no left turn headed east on Barnes Mill onto Goggins. There's no left turn lane there, and that stopped traffic all the way back to, I don't know, I've never seen the end of it. But that just needs to be taken into consideration, not only for this moment in time. They're already digging investigative holes on the farms across the road from us. I was watching them yesterday. So it's, you know, we're not talking 20 or 30 years down the road. We're talking a year or so down the road, if that much, of more high density developments possible. We do not need to set a precedent to allow this type of mixture. And from what I've seen on the paper or on the little sign they put up on the farm there, that's something that needs to be corrected. There needs to be a stipulation that those signs are perpendicular to traffic and not parallel to traffic, because if you're trying to get out of these people's way that's running 50 mile an hour down through there, you haven't got time to read those signs, and there's no parking on the curb lane. So if we could make a stipulation to get those signs more prominently displayed to where we could see. And I stopped, pulled into a driveway to go back and read to see exactly what they were. But the way this development is playing out, I just don't think it's in the best interest of the county or the city, either one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
May I just respond to just one deal?
Yes, you can. You have that right. Yes.
I appreciate the comments that have been made. I'm sorry, Mike Eves. I'm representing the applicant. The comprehensive plan at page 68 says that one of the guiding principles of the land use regulations is to encourage large-scale residential developments that provide for mixed land uses, including different housing types. That's this proposal. I submitted a copy of the county's ordinance 18-05, or I'm sorry, 18-15, which was Exhibit 4. Not for the purpose of suggesting, first of all, I think it's a, and you all understand this without me telling you. Applying a density number in the regulations to X number of acres is a complete fallacy. As our surveyors already testified to, the world is not flat. That piece of paper is flat, and we could take that number of acres and multiply it times units and gets all kinds of units on that property that are never built. They're not buildable. But notwithstanding that, as I understand your regulation, UC2 doesn't just apply to 14.25 units per acre. That's the maximum, but UC2 also includes duplexes. You have no duplex regulation. This would be an entirely different conversation if you did, but you don't. So to imply or to suggest that it's our intent to build 14.25 units per acre on this proposed UC2 property is incorrect. We have not proposed that and would not propose it. And when there's a plat submitted, that's not what you'll see. The other reason I submitted this ordinance is, and I think Mr. Spain, who I've known a very long time, said that there was less than 1% of the property that's in the county that consisted of multifamily, and he suggested that the reason for that is the county and the Planning Commission's desire to protect that rural way of life. Well, I guess a couple of observations. The simple answer to that is sewer. The reason you have less than 1% multifamily development in the county is because you didn't have sewer. You don't have sewer access. That's the import of this ordinance that the Planning Commission approved and the Fiscal Court approved, is that where you've got sewer, there apparently was the thought both from the Planning Commission and from the Fiscal Court that density ought to be more than double. But you don't have multifamily in the county because you don't have sewer. And that's the rather unique thing about this property, is it does. And there was a conversation, there was also a question about water. As I indicated, Mr. Althauser assures me that there's water available. Comes through the Richmond Center property. It's a main line that runs from this property into the single brook line next door, and it'll loop back around to the highway. So the provision of water or water pressure is not a problem. You get a lot of application, and again, with respect to Mr. Spain, I certainly did not say that this was the greatest development property I ever saw. I would like to think if it was, I'd bought it. But that I didn't say that. What I said was that you hear, and in fact, it's rather common for people in my business to say, all these developments meet the comprehensive plan, and quite often you look at the comprehensive plan and it's in there. Well, they all meet the comprehensive plan in some infinitesimal way. This one meets your comprehensive plan in very substantial ways. And you get asked all the time to develop property out in the middle of nowhere. The county doesn't get many opportunities to develop property like this, with access, with the existing streets, with the existing infrastructure in place. It's here. Your comprehensive plan anticipates it, and that's what we're relying on with our request. I'm sorry, that's all. Unless you've got questions.
Any board members have any questions? At this time, we'll take any comments or questions from the board members.
I would like to say, please understand, this is a schematic. I would characterize this as fantasy acres right now, because you do have a lot of things that have to come in development. And a lot of the issues we've talked about are development issues. This is not a plat. So please don't do those calculations thinking you have 39 acres of housing. There's a tremendous amount of cutting back and changing and rerouting green space and water control and sidewalks and streets and parking and and also access. These only show one way in, one way out. We don't do that. It's not good emergency planning. You've got to have better ways in and out. So please don't take this schematic as anything but schematic.
Jubal, can I just say procedurally here, do we need to proceed with a motion on the UC7 to UC1 first, and then also have a separate motion and a second for the UC7 to UC?
We need to do one at a time, right? On both.
We've heard testimony on both, so we're covered on that?
I think so.
Okay.
I assume that presentation, those exhibits apply to both, and your packets of both.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, I think they said UC1 was the first one.
Any more comments or questions from the committee members? this time, I open the floor up for motion. We do have the right to table it if we choose so. We want to discuss it further.
I'll make a motion that we approve the change of 1194 Goggins Lane, 39.6 acres from UC 7 to UC 2.
We're talking about UC one first.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're doing the one first?
22.4
Okay,
first.
That was
I'm
the next
sorry.
item on the agenda.
All right.
Yeah.
The 22.4 acres from UC 7 to UC 1, it is within our comprehensive development plan. They have adequate sewer, more than adequate road access. And there's, I feel there's a need in the community for this type of development, and this is an opportune place to do it.
We have a motion and we need a second, please.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Alan Hatfield,
No.
Doug Fritz,
No.
Paul Bianchi,
No.
Drew Alexander,
Yes.
Roy Schweitzer,
Yes.
Shannon Pennington.
No.
So we have a motion that's failed. Somebody will make a motion
To
to
different.
recommend to the fiscal court to deny the request. Is that right, Jubal? Yeah.
Well, what's
We
right
just
is
made that motion.
There's not been
a motion that's
not
carried.
been action
Right.
on this petition yet.
We need another motion on this 22.4?
You have to take action on this.
Okay.
And you have taken action, you decided not to take the action that,
All right, so with that being said, I open the floor up for another motion recommending action that to be taken with the fiscal court in regard to the 22.4 acre plot.
and just to make it clear, you still need to propose findings. You need to
Yes.
make findings that support
Yeah.
the motion that you make. If the motion's in the negative, you're gonna want to still give the reasons why, I guess would be a way to say it.
And the option is there also for a different motion than Mr. Schweitzer made.
I know,
with
that's what I thought we were-
Different reasons for approval. I'm not suggesting that, but
Yeah.
you all haven't taken any action yet.
That's right.
No motions have carried. So there has to be a motion to either recommend approval or recommend denial to the fiscal court, one way or the other.
You know, with,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
oh, well, with all the discussion that we have taken in here today and with all these things that's been pointed out, tabling it to the next meeting wouldn't be a bad idea.
And I would make that motion. A vast amount of information has been presented tonight by opponents to the plan and by proponents of the plan. And I think the planning commission needs more time to go through the very large set of minutes that will come out of this meeting and analyze both sides and what they have said. So I would make a motion that at this time, because we need more time as a planning commission to look at the information, that we table the UC 7 to UC 1A proposal at this time.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Secretary?
Can I make a
Yes,
comment on
go
that?
ahead.
Which is I always encourage y'all to table these things, but I want to make clear, the information that you'll be able to use will be the information that's presented
That we
tonight.
got tonight, yeah.
Or, yes, absolutely. Or if you make a request in front of everyone, that
Yeah.
either the opponents or the proponents supplement that in a way that you request tonight, and that everybody has a chance to see. If you have a specific question that you ask for clarification on, you could do that. I'm not suggesting that you need to do that, but other than that, make it clear that there'll be no other information that you
Yeah,
need to make there.
you know, what he's saying is the testimony given tonight, that's what we will consider next month when this comes up again.
And let's make it clear that there won't be another public hearing.
There will
There
not
won't
be,
any
there'll
more
be no
testimony.
opportunity for testimony.
We've had the testimony, and you ought to take time to review
There'll
that.
be, like Dr. Bianchi said, there'll be a tremendous amount of meetings, everything that's been said will be recorded. So next month, it'll be basically a meeting to decide among the board.
To take action.
And take action.
So we have a motion to table, and we have a second, is that right?
We do.
Who seconded it?
I did.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Doug Fritz,
Yes.
Paul Miyachi,
Yes.
Drew Alexander,
Yes.
Roy Switzer,
Yes.
Alan Hatfield,
Yes.
Shannon Penn.
Yes. Okay, now we will be, we are required to take action on the next parcel, which is the larger parcel. And it's UC 7 to RA 1, R1A, I'm sorry.
UC2.
It's,
UC2.
UC2, God, yeah, I'm confused, sorry, yes, to UC 7 to UC2. It's
I'll
currently
make a motion
R1A.
to retable the UC 7 to UC 2 for the same reasons as we're tabling the UC 1, that we've heard a vast amount of information tonight in the planning commission. We have more time to read through that information when it comes out in the minutes and analyze what they've got before they try to make this kind of a decision.
I'll second that one as well.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Doug Fritz,
Yes.
Paul Miyachi,
Yes.
Drew Alexander,
Yes.
Roy Switzer,
Yes.
Alan Hatfield,
Yes.
Shannon Penn.
Yes. Okay. Though that will be taken up at our next business section next month. I'm not sure what the exact date is, but it's
Third Tuesday
third
next
Tuesday.
month.
All right. Is there any new business to come before the board?
Oh, God.
With that being said, a motion to adjourn will be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Secretary, please call the roll.
Alan Hatfield,
Yes.
Doug Fritz,
Yes.
Yes.
Paul Miyachi, Drew Alexander,
Yes.
Roy Switzer.
Yes.